Hi students, I'm Dr. Bhavna. In this lecture, we are going to continue with the topic called as biodiversity. So already we have started in the last class. We have done so much about biodiversity. Now in today's class, we will deal about the biodiversity and its conservation. So how to conserve the biodiversity. In today's class, we will see regarding how to conserve the biodiversity. So first we have in the last class we have seen the loss of biodiversity. So many important points we have learned. Suppose Nile perch introduced into Lake Victoria led to species extinction. So what is the loss of biodiversity there you apply? It is called as alien species invasion. So like that we have started and we have continued numerous example for habitat loss and fragmentation. Suddenly they'll ask you like stellar sea cow, passenger pigeon, they both belong to a same, that is called as over exploitation. Over exploitation by humans have caused the extinction of the two main species called as Stella Seca or passenger pigeon. So like that we have continued with that class, and then we have started with how to conserve the biodiversity. So basically the important points regarding how to conserve the biodiversity is conservation. So, in the conservation of biodiversity, basically, there are three important theories which they apply. First one is narrow utilitarian. Narrow utilitarian. Second is broad utilitarian. The third is ethical argument. So in these three, mainly the narrow utilitarian environment. So in this narrow utilitarian, how is the biodiversity useful for us? Here we are trying to explain why is biodiversity useful to us so that we can conserve it. If I say you normally to conserve the nature, will you conserve? No. You will not protect the nature. You will feel that food is very important, so you will cut down the plants. So how it is all useful, today's class we will discuss. So in the conservation of biodiversity, there is narrow, broad and ethical arguments. Narrow, the first one is food. For all of us to have food, we require everything from the plants. So the food is the first main source. Next, firewood. From numerous forests and all, the firewood or the fossil fuels, or you can say numerous types of medicines for the treatment of cancer and all, and for numerous ayurvedic medicines, all we use the medicinal plants only. So for all these benefits we require plants as well as animal species. So in this narrow, it is food, then firewood, fuels and medicines. And in these medicines also, 25% of medicines which we are using are derived from plants only. So plants and animal species are very much important. Animals also, they serve as a, like suppose you want to test a vaccine, suppose COVID vaccine, directly you can't test on patients. First you utilize animals, then for everything, for all these benefits, plants and animals are very useful to us. So in this narrow, it is food, firewood, fuels as well as medicines. And in broadly utilitarian environment, how this is useful? In broad utilitarian, like suppose we think oxygen, suppose almost by the process of photosynthesis, Amazon rainforest, they produce about 20% of total oxygen from the atmosphere. 20% of oxygen is produced from the Earth's atmosphere by this broadly utilitarian. Means we are thinking in the narrow point of view, means it is food, all the basic needs. Suppose you are thinking in a broad way. First of all, we all require oxygen to survive. So how is this oxygen usually provided? By the process of photosynthesis, we require so much amount of oxygen. Like tropical rainforests, they usually produce by the process of photosynthesis about 20% of oxygen, total oxygen in the atmosphere they produce. And now comes the ethical argument. So in this ethical, in this whole planet only we are not living, like we live along with plants as well as animals. So it is our thing, it is our duty to save the plants as well as animals. because they all are beneficial. And it is ethical also, that if persons who are surviving with you should be happy. So the plants as well as animals, because they are sharing the planet with you and they are contributing so much to the environment, we all should conserve the biodiversity. So under ethical argument, it is that we share the planet. We share the planet with plants and animals. So basically, the three important concepts here is for the conservation. Narrow thinking, if you think like food, medicines, 25% of medicines, then fuels, firewood, everything is by the nature, like ecosystem. Broadest 20% of oxygen is usually produced by only the Amazon rainforest. Rest all by plants only oxygen is produced. Or else, how can we inhale oxygen? We don't get any oxygen. So plants are very much required for it. Ethical argument is we share the planet with numerous plants and animals. So this is about the conservation of the nature. Next we are going to continue with the main important topic, that is called as how do we conserve the biodiversity. This is all is uses of the biodiversity. Now how do you exactly conserve the biodiversity? So, under conservation of biodiversity, there are usually two types. One is in situ conservation, the other is ex situ conservation. Under in situ conservation means inside the on-site conservation. On-site, in situ is also called as. Ex situ is also called as off-site. Means suppose you're trying to protect a tiger. If you protect only the tiger, that is called as ex situ conservation. If you protect the tiger along with the forest, means a tiger is present in a forest. If you are thinking only about the tiger, it comes under ex situ conservation. If you are talking about the tiger along with the forest, then it is in situ conservation. And in situ conservation, it is called as on-site conservation. Ex situ is usually off-site conservation. So basically, when you talk about the in situ conservation, you first think about the biodiversity hotspots. So how many biodiversity hotspots are present? There are usually 34 biodiversity hotspots. 34 biodiversity hotspots are usually seen in the environment. Like before, only 25 used to be, now it was increased to 34. What are these biodiversity hotspots? Suppose so many species you see in a specific area, if you see so many amount of species, and if they are trying to get extinct or if they are getting endangered, then you classify that full area as biodiversity hotspot. Then suppose in western Ghats of India, like Assam, Meghalaya forest, numerous species you found. Only you find those species confined to that area. If you find the species which are confined to only specific area, they are called as endemic species. Endemic species. If the species are confined to a specific area. Pandemic is different, endemic is different. Pandemic means suppose you're saying corona is widely spread. That is pandemic situation. One disease spreading rapidly is pandemic to all areas. Endemic means species which are confined to a specific area. So basically in that about 34 biodiversity hotspots you see. And in those 34 biodiversity hotspots, basically the important thing that you should remember is in these biodiversity hotspots like Western Ghats or Himalayas, where more species are found and where they are going to get extinct. If in Himalayas you see one type of animal, that animal will not be found anywhere in the world. So it is considered as a biodiversity hotspot if they are going to get extinct. So like this, they identified in the world 34 biodiversity hotspots. So basically the three examples for India is Western Ghats, Indo-Burma regions or Himalayas of India. All are classified under the in situ conservation, that is biodiversity hotspots. So under in situ conservation again, there are 14 biosphere reserves. 14 biosphere reserves. 90 national parks. 448 wildlife sanctuaries. 14 biosphere reserve. I want you all to remember the number here. 34 biodiversity hotspots, 14 biosphere reserves, 90 are national parks, 448 are wildlife sanctuaries. Then about sacred groves. These all the 14 biosphere reserves, 90 national parks, 448 sanctuaries and sacred groves. These all belong to in situ on site. Means suppose you're trying to preserve an animal. So basically the full animal along with the forest is usually preserved or usually conserved in one nature. So 14 biosphere reserves, 90 national parks, 448 sanctuaries, then sacred groves. So usually the sacred groves, they are usually Aravali hills of Rajasthan. Aravali hills of Rajasthan. Aravali hills of Rajasthan as well as Aravali hills as well as Western Ghats of Karnataka. Aravali hills of Rajasthan as well as Western Ghats of Karnataka. These all are sacred groves. Suppose here in these all areas, full forest, so full is preserved basically. You take one forest and you see an animal. Along with the animal, the full forest is usually maintained. So 14 biosphere reserves, 90 national parks, 448 sanctuaries, sacred groves, Aravali Hills of Rajasthan, Western Ghats. Now, important neat question comes as under in situ or on-site conservation, what are included? Biodiversity were included, biosphere reserves, national parks. I want you to remember the names here. These names are very much important when you come to in situ or on-site preservation. Then ex situ or off-site. When you come to ex situ or off-site conservation, it is usually the important point that you should remember is on-site as well as off-site. So off-site, then the important point that you should remember here is here only the animals are preserved. They are taken out of the environment and they are preserved in some man-made created areas. What are man-made created areas? Like zoological parks like zoos as well as botanical gardens. Zoological parks, botanical gardens, everything are coming under off-site or ex situ preservation. They are not on-site, they are off-site belonging to. Means they are not present, they are not associated with one specific area. Zoological parks, botanical gardens, we are man-made created. Now, some days there are cryopreservation methods also. What is cryopreservation method and under what it is included? They are included under ex situ preservation, means off-site. Suppose nowadays some species are getting extinct. So if you want to conserve the species, the gametes are taken and they are put under cryopreservation methods. They are tested under laboratory and they are put in the lab totally. So when they are put under the lab, the gametes are preserved and the species are usually preserved. So this is called as ex situ or off-site conservation. So this is associated with the cryopreservation techniques. So these are the main differences between the in situ as well as ex situ preservation. Cryopreservation are also included in ex situ cryopreservation. So The conservation methods are usually two. One is in situ, one is ex situ. In situ is on site, ex situ is off site. In situ is 34 biodiversity hotspot, 14 biosphere reserves, 90 national parks, 448 sanctuaries, then Aravalli Hills of Rajasthan as well as Western Ghats. So these are associated with that. And sacred groves, under sacred groves, it is Aravalli Hills as well as Western Ghats. Now, ex situ preservation or off-site is zoological parks, botanical gardens as well as cryopreservation methods. Main difference is on-site, off-site. In situ means in that area only you're preserving. Ex situ means you're taking out from that area and preserving. Cryopreservation means the gametes of the extinct species are preserved and then it is associated with that of the same preservation methods. So these are the two important conservation methods which are associated with that of how do you preserve. Next, there are so many things like in the biodiversity, how are they preserved basically. So under conservation only, for the conservation of biodiversity, usually all the countries will come together for conservation of biodiversity. There is no political support or nothing like that to conserve the biodiversity. So everything, every time the world, the total world will come together to conserve the biodiversity. Basically, two summits were organized within a span of 10 years. Like the one is the Earth Summit. Earth Summit, which was organized in 1992. The other is World Summit, which was organized in 2002. So Earth Summit is 1992, World Summit is 2002. So in the Earth Summit, usually 1992, it was held at Rio de Janeiro. Rio de Janeiro. World Summit was held in Johannesburg, South Africa. So these are the two important NEET questions which they will ask very frequently. Where are the two summits done, which year, as well as where is the place where they are held? And Earth Summit as well as World Summit is related to what? Because next we will start with the chapter called as environmental issues. So in the environmental issues, numerous acts will be given: Water Act, Environment Act, or Pollution Act, Air Act, like that numerous acts will be given. So they want to confuse you in the topic of ecology. So basically they will ask you like questions related to Earth Summit and World Summit are associated with. So the answer is, for the conservation of biodiversity, all the nations have come together to organize in the 1992 as well as 2002, within a span of 10 years. Earth Summit, World Summit. Where is the Earth Summit done is Rio de Janeiro, as well as World Summit is Johannesburg, South Africa. Because South Africa, so many species of plants and animals you see, and like that you can remember. And 1992 years, I want you to remember what are the summits related to what, like conservation of biodiversity and all. Then where they are held, that is related to conservation of biodiversity. Next, we are going to start with this ends with the chapter of biodiversity. So we will continue with the main important topic which was frequently asked in NEET, because in these numerous numericals will be there to remember. Numericals means related to years. So I want you all to write down so that 2 or 3 times you can easily remember. So related to environmental issues. So under ecology only, it was a fresh chapter that is called as environmental issues. So, under environmental issues, basically, what are the main terms which are associated? First is for any environment to get everything to get damaged, what are the main things? Agents which cause the bad signals is nothing but pollutants. Pollutants. So, what is exactly pollution? Undesirable changes means we are not thinking about it. The undesirable changes which usually takes place the in water, the chemical biological elements which takes place, undesirable changes which takes place related to chemical biological agents. Undesirable changes which takes place related to chemical or biological agents is called as pollution, basically, of air, water, land. We can say anything of air, water, anything is called as pollution. So simple, you can understand, don't get so much confused. Agents which cause all this is called as pollutants. Now what is exactly pollution is undesirable changes which takes place of biological chemical agents which takes place related to air or water. Anything is called as pollution. So to control the pollution, basically there was an act which was given called as Environmental Act. Environmental Act, which was given in 1978. 1986. Environmental Act was given in 1986 to protect the environment from all these pollutants. First, when we have started with the chapter, it is environmental issues. So, in environmental issues, basically, we have started with the specific chapter that is called as pollutants as well as pollution. So, Environmental Act to control the pollutants in the environment was given in 1986. I want you to remember the year because it was very times asked in the NEET. So now we will go to, there are numerous pollutions like water pollution, air pollution, soil pollution and all. About each one of us we will deal. So first we will start with water pollution. So when we start with water pollution, all the waste the which we are recovering from our households, everything, all are dumped into the rivers or lakes or seas. So what is happening when all the wastes are going and dumped into these areas? They are getting polluted. The water is getting polluted. The rivers, sea, everything is getting polluted. So because of this, to protect all this, again Water Act was passed. But the Water Act was the first act which was passed because to conserve the numerous water bodies. To see, for every waste disposal there is a method. Simply you can't go and throw it in the rivers or seas. And here the purified water is damaged there. All the pollutants will be reaching. Okay, some pollutants means that is okay, but maximum pollutants are dumped into this rivers only. So further what will happen, we won't get proper water to drink for ourselves. So a Water Act was passed. This was the first act which was passed compared to Air Act and all, because water is very important for the conservation. For we surviving, the water is very much necessary. So Water Act was passed, that is in 1974. Water Act. Water Protection Act. It was passed in 1974. Till now, in pollution definition, no need to remember. Water pollutants, no need to remember. You should remember these two acts. First, Environmental Act 1986, Water Act 1974, because it was the first act which was passed related to water. So the another thing related to that of Water Act is, first we will start with what are the impurities which are present. Suppose domestic sewage. Domestic sewage means what? Which is released from the waste or the sewage water which is released from our households or the industrial effluents. Everything will come under domestic sewage only. So that is all the waste. So in the domestic sewage, basically, domestic sewage. In the domestic sewage, about 99%, means maximum percent, about 99% is water only. Simple, pure water is present in the domestic sewage, which we are releasing from households, the industrial effluents. Maximum 99% is water only. Only 0.1%, 0.1% is impurities. So what are the impurities basically associated with it? There are three types of impurities. One is suspended solids, colloidal material. The second one is colloidal material. One is suspended solids, colloidal material. Then the third important is dissolved particles. So in these suspended solids, usually in these suspended solids, the sand or clay, everything will come under suspended because they are suspended to the ground areas. So these can be easily removed. So the suspended solids example is sand as well as clay. Under colloidal material, what is the most important thing related to colloidal material is all the bacteria, the cloth, the paper, all will come under colloidal material. Cloth, paper, bacteria which are present. So dissolved particles means nitrates, phosphates, everything. So the important thing that you should remember is, in the Water Pollution Environmental Act 1986, Water Act 1974, 1986, like that you can remember. Then domestic sewage, when we have started, most amount of the domestic sewage contains 99.99% of water, only 0.1% is impurities. You all may think, suppose 0.1% only impurities are there, so we can use the water. No, because of this 0.1% impurities which are present in the domestic sewage, they are not again consumed usually. So that when they are not consumed, it is waste, right? So they are not consumed, they are unfit. Those 0.1 impurities are present, they are unfit for the household uses. So again, there are suspended solids, that is in the 0.1%, these all are contributing to only 0.1%. One is suspended solids, colloidal material, dissolved particles. Suspended solids, it is sand, clay. Colloidal material, cloth, bacteria as well as paper. Dissolved particles, nitrate, phosphate. They'll ask you an example. They'll give you clay and sand, they belong to suspended solids. Again, cloth, paper all belong to colloidal matter. What is dissolved is nitrates and phosphates. So these are the three important things which are associated with impurities. But the main point that you should remember is, there is no harm with these suspended solids or colloidal materials. They can be easily removed. But there is so much problem with that of dissolved particles only. There is so much of problem. So that's why we can't separate these dissolved materials. So all the domestic sewage is transferred into rivers and all. So that only we should protect. So we will see in the next class about, again we'll continue with this wastewater management only, or Water Act, how it was passed and all, and how all the aging of the lake and all is taking place. And then we will start with air pollution. This is water pollution which we are dealing. After that we will see about the air pollution also in the next class. Okay.